In this podcast episode, Paul Rosolie shares his extraordinary experiences spanning 2 decades living and working in the Amazon rainforest alongside indigenous communities. He reveals his efforts to save the Amazon, his encounters with uncontacted tribes, and the life lessons gleaned from deep immersion in one of Earth's most vital ecosystems. The conversation touches on conservation, indigenous cultures under threat, Paul's perilous adventures, including being nearly crushed by an anaconda, and how the intersection of nature, technology, and personal purpose shapes our future. Paul recounts how, as a high school dropout, he pursued a life drastically different from conventional paths. Driven by a craving for adventure and a search for meaning, he left formal education early to work in remote Amazonian research stations. Adopting a life termed the barefoot machete days, he learned survival and wilderness skills from indigenous mentors, particularly JJ, an indigenous man who became his guide and teacher. This bond opened Paul's eyes to the Amazon's complexity, biodiversity, and cultural richness. The Amazon is often misunderstood as simply a vast jungle brimming with trees and wildlife. Paul emphasizes its critical role as the planet's largest contiguous rainforest, containing 1/5 of the world's fresh water and oxygen production. Half of its biodiversity exists in the canopy, a 150-foot-high realm largely hidden from view. Its ecological function is irreplaceable, yet the scale and significance of the Amazon remain largely unrecognized by many. Paul differentiates between indigenous peoples who maintain limited contact with the outside world and the uncontacted tribes, such as the Mashkapiro, living deep in the forest. These tribes have remained isolated for centuries, maintaining a bamboo-age hunter-gatherer lifestyle, completely unknown to modern civilization. Their existence was once dismissed as myth but has been confirmed through local reports, rare encounters, and drone and satellite evidence. The episode narrates the tense first contact moments when these tribes emerged cautiously from the jungle, armed with longbows and arrows, communicating a demand for respect and the protection of their sacred forests. The meeting with the uncontacted tribe was fraught with fear and uncertainty on both sides. The tribe's warriors approached across a river, speaking in their language unknown to outsiders, but loosely related to neighboring groups. They requested food, such as plantains, and asked how to distinguish bad guys from good guys, highlighting the threat they face from loggers, narco-traffickers, and outsiders. The encounter demonstrated the tribe's desire for peaceful engagement, but also the immense risks they face, including retaliatory violence and vulnerability to disease. Paul explains how uncontacted tribes and indigenous communities are under siege from deforestation, illegal mining, logging, and narco-trafficking. The Peruvian government has limited jurisdiction in remote jungle regions, leaving these people to defend themselves in a lawless environment. Jungle Keepers, the conservation organization Paul leads, works closely with indigenous communities by providing sustainable jobs as forest guardians. This approach transforms former loggers and miners into rangers who protect rather than exploit the forest, securing an ecosystem as well as the cultural survival of its inhabitants. The discussion highlights profound insights from Paul's immersion into the jungle. He contrasts the modern screen-addicted lifestyles marked by loneliness and disconnection with the visceral reality of living intimately with nature. Survival in the wild sharpens senses, builds resilience, and reconnects individuals with fundamental truths about life and community. He touches on neuroscience, describing how challenging experiences physically grow parts of the brain associated with emotional control and perseverance, something lost in digital-era childhoods. Paul shares personal stories of hardship, including injuries from wildlife, infections untreated by modern medicine, and violent encounters with traffickers. These experiences fostered relentless determination. Despite setbacks, such as a controversial television stunt where he was portrayed being eaten alive by an anaconda, which damaged his reputation, Paul doubled down on his mission. The narrative underscores the value of grit, embracing failure, and staying committed to a cause against long odds. A remarkable episode involved Paul agreeing to be encased in a protective suit and enveloped by a giant anaconda for a Discovery Channel show. Intended to demystify snakes and share conservation messages, the project was edited to sensationalize the stunt without emphasizing the scientific research. This misrepresentation sparked backlash from environmentalists, animal advocates, and the public, sidelining Paul's career temporarily, but ultimately refocusing his efforts on grassroots conservation. Paul recounts meeting Jane Goodall, whose endorsement of his book and work significantly boosted his legitimacy. He attributes much of his ability to narrate compelling conservation stories to early inspirations like Tolkien and Arthur Conan Doyle, and the example set by Goodall, who emphasized empathy and connection in wildlife research. Storytelling becomes a vital tool in his mission to raise awareness and forge partnerships. Jungle Keepers is central to Paul's work, an innovative conservation program combining indigenous knowledge, community empowerment, and modern technology. It leverages social media and international funding to protect hundreds of thousands of acres of fragile rainforest. The model focuses on sustainable livelihoods for locals, turning economic incentives away from destructive industries and toward forest stewardship, with the goal of establishing protected areas and national parks. The podcast delves into indigenous healing techniques that saved Paul's life multiple times. After contracting a rare infection untreatable by antibiotics, he was healed through the application of tree sap and leaf concoctions. This highlights the vast but endangered knowledge embedded in native cultures, whose loss would be catastrophic for potential medical discoveries and biodiversity. Paul shares his deep personal connection to nature as a source of spiritual fulfillment. He believes in God but considers science the language through which the divine communicates. The Amazon is seen as a living, breathing entity with sacred roots linked to creation myths. Healing, purpose, and meaning arise from this relationship, serving as motivation to protect the ecosystem. The conversation probes themes about humanity's place in the natural order. Paul stresses that ecologically humans are not the dominant species. Instead, our intelligence imparts us stewardship responsibilities. Removing humans would lead to rapid ecological recovery, yet our unique cognitive abilities position us as protectors of Earth's biodiversity. This responsibility frames much of his purpose. In contrast to his forest life, Paul considers modern technological advances in AI with cautious optimism. He sees AI as a tool to augment human capability rather than replace humanity. He believes real, meaningful human experiences, especially with nature and community, will only become more precious as technology advances. Paul encourages mindful use of technology without succumbing to online hysteria or doom-scrolling. Paul describes his intense experiences with ayahuasca, an indigenous Amazonian psychoactive brew. The journey was transformative, confronting him with cosmic visions and a new awareness of self and existence. Indigenous communities regard it as a sacred bridge between spirit and physical worlds. While not for everyone, such experiences have shaped Paul's worldview regarding interconnectedness and respect for nature. Despite the rugged and dangerous lifestyle in remote jungle landscapes, Paul speaks about his romantic relationship and marriage. His partner shares his passion for conservation and often joins expeditions. Together, they balance the demands of wilderness life with organizational leadership and personal bonding, exemplifying how meaningful partnerships can thrive even in extraordinary circumstances. Paul also candidly shares the harsh realities of jungle living, using the example of leafcutter ants dismantling his tent overnight. The jungle is a relentless energy economy where every creature competes for survival and decay leads to new life. Understanding this cycle emphasizes the precarious balance of the ecosystem and the vitality of even the smallest organisms. Despite confronting the vast threats of deforestation, species loss, and cultural extinction, Paul maintains optimism. He highlights conservation successes with tigers, whales, and ozone recovery as proof that change is possible. He stresses urgent action is needed to protect the Amazon, the lungs of the planet, before irreversible damage occurs. His story serves as a call to embrace responsibility, persistence, and hope. Paul offers guidance to young people pursuing ambitious dreams, urging them to accumulate experience by working alongside masters in their fields rather than immediately striking out alone. Persistence, relentless passion, and finding mentors are key. He cautions about the difficulty of balancing rational advice with emotional drive, emphasizing that extraordinary achievements often require unusual commitment and enduring multiple setbacks. Finally, Paul invites listeners to support Jungle Keepers, explaining how small donations can compound into meaningful change. The organization offers transparent pathways for global supporters to protect endangered ecosystems and empower Indigenous communities. Donations help create jobs, protect land, and sustain biodiversity. Paul stresses that collective efforts, no matter how small, are pivotal to saving the Amazon for future generations.